I am the wife of a first-rank minister, having borne my husband 2 sons and a daughter, treated his concubines kindly, and respected my mother-in-law. Everyone says I've had a perfect family life, with a loving husband and accomplished children, making me the most envied woman in all of Shangjing. On my deathbed, my husband held my hand and gently said, "The 3 children you gave birth to are all enslaved in the manor. The ones by your side are the flesh and blood of my cousin and me." Overwhelmed with rage, I fainted dead away. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I had just given birth to my child. The midwife carried the child out to announce the good news, and I forced myself to sit up. "Wait, bring the child to me." Nanny Ju's smile froze for a moment, then deepened even more. "Madam, you've just given birth and are very tired. The young master is still dirty as well. Let this old servant take him to be cleaned first, then bring him back for you to see." I said, "Bring him over." Without waiting for her reaction, I directly ordered my trusted maid Chun Dao, who was standing by the bed. "Chun Dao, go, bring the young master over." Although Chun Dao didn't understand why, she obeyed my every command without question and immediately stepped forward. Taking the child from Nanny Ju and bringing him to me, I propped up my weak body and looked down. The tiny little one had his eyes closed, all wrinkled up, with a small petal-shaped light red birthmark on his temple. Nanny Ju is getting old and may not have the energy to take care of a child. From today onward, young master will be personally cared for by Chun Dao and Xia He, who must not leave his side. My voice was calm, yet carried an unyielding force. No one, including the master, is allowed to take the young master out of my sight without my permission. Is that understood? Chun Dao and Xia He immediately bowed. "Yes, madam." Nanny Ju's face instantly turned deathly pale, her mouth opening as if she wanted to say something. I didn't look at her again, just wearily lay back down, closed my eyes, and tightly cradled the small, warm bundle in my arms. Footsteps soon sounded from outside, accompanied by Jiyu Jingshuan's deliberately cheerful voice. "How is my wife? Is the child well?" The curtain was lifted aside as Jiyu Jingxian walked in. He was dressed in casual clothes, his face full of concern as he quickly approached the bedside. In my past life, I was deceived by this very demeanor of his for a lifetime. At this moment, I opened my eyes and gave him a weak smile. "My husband is here." His gaze immediately fell upon the child in my arms. "Is this our child? You've worked hard." "My lady." As he spoke, he reached out his hands, quite naturally wanting to take the child. I tightened my arms slightly, not letting go. Jiyu Jingshuan's hand paused mid-air, a look of confusion on his face. "Madam," I lowered my lashes, my voice choked with emotion. "Husband, I just had a nightmare." "Oh, what dream?" Jiyu Jingxian sat down on the edge of the bed, withdrawing his hand, and asked with concern. "I dreamed that someone was trying to take our child away." I lifted my eyes, which shimmered with unshed tears, and looked directly at him. I was so frightened. When I woke up and saw Nanny Ju trying to take him away, I panicked. "My dear husband, I nearly lost my life giving birth to this child. I don't want him to leave my side for even a moment." I held the child tightly, my body trembling slightly. "So, I've decided to have Chun Dao and Xia He take care of the child from now on, right here in my room. As for Nanny Ju, give her some silver and let her retire honorably." Jiyu Jingshuan's brow furrowed briefly before smoothing out. He reached out and gently patted my shoulder, his tone gentle. "It's just a dream, why take it so seriously? You're so frightened." All right, I'll do as you say. Whatever you decide about how to handle things, we'll go with that. Nanny Ju is getting on in years, and since you, my lady, wish for her to rest, then let her rest." He agreed readily, his face showing no trace of deception. If I hadn't been reborn and known everything, I might have almost believed he was truly a considerate and attentive husband. "Thank you for your understanding, husband." I nestled back into the pillow obediently. "Rest well, I'll come to see you later." Jiyu Jingxian took one last look at the child, then stood up and left. Sure enough, just 2 days later, I heard that Nanny Ju had accidentally fallen into the pond in the back garden and drowned. The entire household simply regarded it as an accident, sighing a few times before letting the matter drop. Listening to the news Xiahe had gathered, I sneered inwardly. I poured all my energy into protecting the child. Jiyu Jingxian made several attempts to take the child away from me, but I fended him off each time with the excuse, I can't sleep or find peace if I don't see him. A month later, the child reached the full moon, and was named Mingjin. The Jiyu residents held a grand banquet for guests. I appeared before the guests. Holding Mingjin wrapped in a brocade swaddling cloth, I smiled appropriately, accepting everyone's compliments. Congratulations, Minister Jiyu. Congratulations, Madam. The young master is truly as lovely as jade and snow, destined for greatness in the future. Madam looks radiant. Minister Jiyu is truly considerate. Jiyu Jingxian stood by my side, his smile gentle and composed, handling everything with ease. We still appear to be the most enviable loving couple in the capital. During the banquet, I mentioned, a few days ago, I received a letter from my family saying that my father's old injury has flared up again. I'm deeply concerned. With my elder brother guarding the frontier, I, as his daughter, cannot be by his side to fulfill my filial duties. I feel truly ashamed. The Wei family of Nanyang rose to prominence through military achievements. Although my father has retired from service and lives in honor, his influence in the military remains. My elder brother Wei Zheng is a border general who commands a significant military force. This is Jiyu Jingxuan's greatest reliance and the fundamental reason he dares not easily break with me. He immediately responded, "You are right, my lady. My father-in-law's health is of utmost importance. I will go find some high-quality medicinal herbs tomorrow and also write a letter to my elder brother to inquire if there are any skilled physicians at the border." I looked at him gratefully. You've put a lot of thought into this, my husband. After the full moon banquet, life seemed to return to normal. I peacefully raised Mingjin, managed the household affairs, remained gentle and considerate towards Jiyu Jingxian as always, and paid my respects to my mother-in-law morning and evening without any fault to be found. Secretly, my actions never ceased. I used my dowry and the businesses I had been quietly managing over the years to start casting my net. The first thing I did was send someone to the manor 50 miles west of the city. I had to confirm whether my other 2 children were there and what their current situation was. Half a month later, my trusted guard Wei Cheng returned with news. "Madam, we've found them." Wei Cheng is the chief guard I brought with me from the Wei family, and his father was my father's personal soldier. There are indeed 2 children in the village, a boy, about 13 or 14 years old, frail and sickly, and a girl, 8 or 9 years old. My heart felt as if it were being tightly gripped by a cold hand, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. "How is that girl's health?" My voice trembled. I heard she caught a chill a few days ago, and the people at the estate didn't take it seriously. Wei Cheng paused. "I have discreetly arranged for a reliable old woman to look after her quietly. Medicine was administered, and she is now out of danger." Good, I repeated, suppressing the warmth and moisture in my eyes. "Wei Cheng, you've done well. Continue having people keep an eye on them, and make sure they're safe, especially that girl. But it must be absolutely discreet. We can't alert the enemy. It's not yet time to bring them back." "Understood. And one more thing." I pondered for a moment. "Find a way to let the woman who takes care of them overhear some gossip. Say, the minister's wife is kind-hearted and can't bear to see children suffer. If she finds out that a servant's child on the estate is seriously ill and no one is taking care of them, she will definitely offer help. I need to first plant words favorable to me within the estate." "Yes." Wei Cheng accepted the order and left. After dealing with the child's matter, I turned my attention to the household. I summoned Chun Dao and Xia He. "Chun Dao, you are meticulous. Starting tomorrow, discreetly observe everyone in the household who is on good terms with Nanny Ju or has received favors from her in the past, especially those who have access to the inner courtyard and have the opportunity to approach the young master. Report any abnormalities to me immediately. Xiahe, you have an outgoing personality. Mingle more with the maids and matrons in the mansion, and listen to the gossip. Focus on finding out about the master's cousin, Miss Lian Xin, also, who serves in the master's study in the outer courtyard, and if there are any special interactions among them, The two maids immediately accepted the order. A few days later, Shaha brought back an interesting piece of news. "Madam, I heard from Granny Zhong in the laundry that the maid named Chuyue, who serves in the master's study, had her brother involved in a lawsuit a few days ago, and it was Steward Lin from the outer courtyard who helped settle it. That old woman Zhong also said she saw Chuyue returning from the outer courtyard late at night, sneaking around, and what else? I picked up the teacup, gently stirring the foam, and I found out that Miss Lian Xin, back in the day, seemed to have left behind an old nanny who served her closely, surnamed Sun. They say she opened a small embroidery shop in the West City." I set down the teacup, already forming a plan in my mind. He. "Go find out the exact location of that Granny Sun's embroidery shop, Chun Dao. Find a way to let Chiu Yu's family know that their son's lawsuit was resolved thanks to the mistress, because I mentioned in front of Manager Lin that Chiu Yu serves the master diligently." Day by day, Mingjin gradually grew up, her features becoming more distinct and increasingly adorable. On the surface, Jiyu Jingxian still played the role of a loving father to Mingjin. He began to stay overnight more frequently in the rooms of his concubines, especially the one surnamed Liu, whose appearance somewhat resembled the Lianxin in his memory. I watched coldly and did not interfere. In fact, after one of his nights with concubine Liu, I even specially rewarded her with a piece of fashionable fabric the next day, praising her for serving the master diligently. Jiyu Jingxian was very pleased with this, probably thinking that I was still virtuous beyond reproach. At the same time, the seeds I had planted began to bear fruit. First was Chuyue. Her parents somehow learned the truth and expressed endless gratitude to me. When Chuyue came to kowtow and thank me, her eyes were evasive. Then, rumors about the two servants' sons on the estate gradually began to circulate among some of the lower-ranking servants in the mansion. They all say the lady is kind-hearted. If she knew about this, she certainly wouldn't stand by and do nothing. That day, I went to pay my respects to my mother-in-law, Lady Jiyu. As soon as I sat down, the old lady took my hand and sighed. "Jingshu, I heard there are 2 children on the western estate who are gravely ill and no one is taking care of them. The servants are really too irresponsible. You are now in charge of the household, so you must manage what needs to be managed. Our Jiyu family cannot afford to gain a reputation for mistreating our servants." I feigned surprise and pity on my face. "Such a thing has happened. I had no idea. Thank you for the reminder, Mother. I will send someone to the estate to check on them. If it is indeed true, we must make proper arrangements, call for a doctor, and provide medicine. We cannot let the child suffer in vain." The old lady nodded with satisfaction. "You are a sensible one. It is Jingshuan's good fortune to have married you." I lowered my gaze, hiding the mockery in my eyes, as I left the old lady's courtyard. I ran into Jiyu Jingxian returning from court. He didn't look well, and when he saw me, he forced a faint smile. "Has Madam come to see Mother?" "Yes," I said softly. "Mother just mentioned that there are 2 seriously ill children on the estate with no one to care for them. It pains me deeply, and I was planning to send someone to handle it as soon as I return." Jiyu Jingshuan's face instantly darkened, but he quickly regained his composure. "Such trivial matters need not trouble you, Madam. I will have the outer courtyard steward handle it." His tone carried a barely noticeable tension. "My lord, you are busy with court affairs. How could I trouble you with such minor household matters?" I insisted. "Besides, Mother specifically instructed me, if I don't take care of it, wouldn't that be unfilial? It's just a matter of sending someone to check on things. It won't be much trouble." Jiyu Jingxian stared at me, his gaze sharp, while I met his eyes calmly, my own clear and unwavering. After a long moment, he looked away, his tone softening. "Since you're so kind-hearted, we'll do as you say, but the estate is far away, so choose the person you send carefully. We don't want any trouble to arise. He is warning me." I smiled slightly. "Don't worry, husband, I understand." I indeed sent people to the manor, making a grand show of delivering medicine and clothing, and sternly reprimanded the estate manager. I had the 2 children moved to the best rooms in the manor and assigned dedicated caretakers to look after them. The news came back, and Jiyu Jingshuan's expression remained grim for several days. That evening after dinner, He unusually stayed in my room for tea. Madam, you seem to have been particularly attentive to the household affairs lately. He brought it up as if casually. I blew on the tea foam, looked up at him, my gaze calm. Husband, why do you say that? As the mistress of the minister's residence, managing the household and educating the children are my duties. Perhaps I was young before and had some oversights, but now with Jinnah, I feel the weight of responsibility even more and dare not slack off. When I mentioned Jinnah, Gu Jingshuan's eyes softened for a moment, but then turned deep again. Jinnah is fortunate to have you personally raise him. He paused, with a meaningful tone. However, some things are best left in the past, my lady. There's no need to dwell on them too much. As husband and wife, we are one. What matters most is the stability of this family. You are right, my lord. I set down the teacup, picked up the embroidery hoop, and began stitching a small bellaband for Mingjin, my tone gentle and soft. This household will naturally remain stable, as long as no one attempts to shake its foundations. My fingertips held a delicate embroidery needle, glinting coldly under the lamplight. The timing was gradually ripening, and I decided to meet someone, that matron's son. I changed into the attire of an ordinary wealthy lady, wearing a veiled hat, and brought only Wei Cheng and Chundao with me, quietly arriving at that small son's embroidery shop in the western city. The embroidery shop's storefront was small, with simple furnishings inside. An elderly woman with graying hair was sitting behind the counter, head bowed as she embroidered something. I walked into the shop, and she looked up, her face wearing the customary smile of a businessperson. Madam, what would you like to see? I gave a signal, and Chundao and Wei Cheng stood guard at the door. I took off my veil hat and walked up to her, looking at her calmly. Nanny-san, long time no see. Nanny-san's smile instantly froze on her face. She widened her eyes, looking at me in disbelief. You are the minister's wife. You have a good memory, madam. I sat down on the stool in front of her. I came today to talk with you about someone from the past. Madam Sun's face turned deathly pale, her lips trembling. Madam, what would you like to talk about? This old servant knows nothing. Is that so? I gently stroked the embroidery pattern on the counter, my tone calm. Nanny was an old acquaintance of Miss Lianxin, so you must be quite familiar with her affairs. Nanny's son trembled all over, suddenly looked up at me, her eyes filled with terror. Madam, you must not believe the rumors. Rumors, I smiled faintly, taking a simple silver hairpin from my sleeve and placing it on the counter. Nanny, do you recognize this item? Upon seeing the hairpin, Nanny's son collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down her aged face. Miss, it's the young lady's hairpin. Lianxin is Gu Jingshuan's mistress, and she even bore him a son and a daughter, I said slowly. That son and daughter were taken away by Gu Jingxian and became the legitimate children under my care, while Lianxin gave birth to a son a few months ago and died in childbirth. Am I right? Nanny's son's sobbing came to an abrupt halt. No, that can't be, the master said. He lied to me, lied to Lianxin, and lied to you too. I interrupted her, my voice icy. Granny's son was dumbfounded, her murky eyes filled with shock. I stood up and placed a silver ingot on the counter. You're a smart woman. Granny, think it over carefully. If you come to a decision, you can find the shopkeeper at the Brocade Emporium in the east of the city. Without another word, I put on my veil hat and turned to leave. Not long after returning from Granny's son's embroidery shop, Gu Jingxian seemed to have noticed something, as he increased the guards at his study, but I was in no hurry. I had Chundao deliberately complain in front of Chiyue, saying that the master had been troubled with worries lately, as expected. Chiyue passed this information on to Steward Lin. Not long after, he came running to me excitedly and said, Madam, I've found out. The master recently sent someone to the West City in secret, as if looking for an old nanny with the surname Sun, but it seems they were too late. The nanny's embroidery shop has closed, and she's nowhere to be found. I smiled faintly. Unfortunately, Nanny's son had already been secretly relocated to a safe place by Wei Cheng. A few days later, I mentioned in front of Gu Jingxian, My lord, I heard the western part of the city has been unsettled lately. It seems an old nanny has gone missing. Even the capital prefecture has been alerted. Jiyu Jingshuan's hand holding the teacup trembled almost imperceptibly, splashing a few drops of tea. Is that so? It's a trivial matter. My lady need not trouble yourself with it. I only heard the servants gossiping about it, I said as if unintentionally. They also said that the old woman used to work for a wealthy family, and her surname is Sun, husband. Do you remember if cousin Lianxin also had a woman with the surname Sun by her side? Clang! Jiyu Jingshuan's teacup finally slipped from his grasp, falling to the ground and shattering into pieces. He suddenly stood up, his face ashen, his eyes dark and menacing as he stared at me. Wei Jingshu, what exactly do you know? I lifted my gaze and calmly met his eyes. What do I know, husband? What do you think I should know? His chest heaved violently as he stepped closer to me. I'm warning you, don't get clever. Some things are not for you to touch, not for me to touch. I slowly rose to my feet, meeting his gaze at eye level, a mocking curve lifting the corner of my lips. For instance, your relationship with Li Lianxin, for instance, the 3 children you placed by my side, whom I raised for over a decade, are actually your bloodline with her, and for instance, my own son and daughter, whom you abandoned to serve as slaves in the estate. Jiyu Jingxian was as if struck by lightning, staggering back a step, his hand trembling as he pointed at me. You, how did I know? I asked the question for him, walking up to him with a gaze as sharp as a knife. Jiyu Jingxian, do you think you've covered all your tracks? The heavens are watching, your disgraceful affair with Li Lianxin. All the evil you and she have done to me and my child, the heavens have seen it all. Nonsense, he roared with a bluster that betrayed his inner weakness. Where is the evidence? Evidence, I sneered coldly. Does mother-son count as evidence? Do the 2 living children on the estate count as evidence? Jiyu Jingxian, guess what would happen if my father and brothers found out that the daughter and sister they hold so dear in their hearts has been so humiliated and manipulated by you? What would happen if His Majesty knew that the trusted minister he relies on has such a filthy and immoral household? You wouldn't dare. Jiyu Jingshuan's eyes widened with fury. Why wouldn't I dare? I met his murderous gaze head-on. The daughters of the Nanyang Wei family have never been lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Jiyu Jingxian, from the moment you decided to deceive me, you should have anticipated this day. Fine, very good. Wei Jingshu, I've underestimated you. He spoke through gritted teeth. But do you think you've already won? Don't forget, Mingyu and Mingru are still nominally your children. If we tear each other apart, no one will benefit. He began to threaten me using the children. I sneered. What do they have to do with me? Jiyu Jingxian, you seem to have forgotten, they are your precious son and daughter, and my child, Wei Jingshu's, is only Mingjin, and those 2 on the estate, their future is for me, their mother, and my Nanyang Wei family to worry about. Jiyu Jingxian was left speechless, his face turning ashen, yet he had no way to refute her. Just then, a sudden flurry of hurried footsteps and commotion came from outside. Master, madam, something terrible has happened. Manager Lin's panicked voice sounded outside the door. The eldest young master has been taken away by the censorate at the Hanlin Academy, they say. They say he's involved in a case of imperial examination fraud. Jiyu Jingshuan's face changed abruptly, and he sharply turned his gaze toward me. I straightened my slightly wrinkled sleeves, my expression calm and unperturbed. I looked at his instantly panicked eyes and spoke softly. Husband, you see, retribution has arrived, hasn't it? Jiyu Jingshuan's face turned as pale as paper the moment he heard Steward Lin's report. It was you. He practically spat out those 2 words through gritted teeth. I picked up the other surviving cup of tea on the table and took a gentle sip. What are you talking about? Husband, I'm just as anxious as you are about what happened to Mingyu. But how can you groundlessly suspect me? Examination fraud is such a serious matter. How could a woman confined to the inner chambers like me possibly interfere? Jiyu Jingxian stared at me intently, his chest heaving violently. Master, madam, what should we do now? Steward Lin was so anxious that sweat poured down his face. The officials from the censorate stormed into the Hanlin Academy and took the eldest young master away. They said they have both witnesses and material evidence, and they're coming on strong. Witnesses, material evidence. Jiyu Jingxian forced himself to calm down and took a deep breath. What exactly happened? Explain clearly. I heard that some candidates who failed the imperial examination jointly filed a complaint, alleging that the spring examination questions had been leaked. Somehow, the matter was linked to the young master, saying that before the exam, the young master frequently interacted with the son of one of the deputy examiners, the Vice Minister of Rights, Li, and there was also written evidence of monetary transactions. Manager Lin's voice grew softer and softer. Minister of Rights Li, that's one of Jiyu Jingxuan's allies in the court. This matter could be handled lightly or seriously. Jiyu Jingxuan's face was so dark it could drip water. He glanced at me with a complicated look in his eyes, then turned away with a flick of his sleeve. Prepare the sedan, I am going to the Li residence. He hurried away, not even bothering to argue with me further. Watching his flustered retreat, I set down my teacup and calmly instructed Chundao, go. Tell Wei Cheng to discreetly pass the news about young Master Li's massive gambling debts and his sudden repayment of them the other day to the servants of those censors who have been making the most noise. Yes, madam. Chundao accepted the order and quickly left. Exam fraud is a serious crime. Once proven, Jiyu Mingyu's future would be completely ruined, and Jiyu Jingxian would also be implicated. In the following days, the minister's residence was shrouded in gloom. Jiyu Jingxian ran around everywhere, trying to get Jiyu Mingyu out, even swallowing his pride to ask my brother Wei Zheng for help. Unfortunately, I had already sent a letter, telling my brother to hold his position and not act. Jiyu Jingxian was rebuffed and returned to the estate with an even uglier expression. Concubine Liu, emboldened by her recent favor, began to grow restless. She first ran up to me, openly and subtly suggesting that Jiyu Mingyu might not be able to hold on. Hinting that I should start planning for the future, I looked at her face, which bore some resemblance to Li Lianxin's, and sneered inwardly. You're very thoughtful, Aunt Liu. I leisurely trimmed the potted plant on the table. However, the matter concerning Mingyu has not yet been settled, so it is too early to discuss this. Moreover, even if something were to happen, the status of the legitimate heir is not something just any random person can covet. Concubine Liu's face turned pale, and she awkwardly retreated. Not 2 days later, she began whispering in his ear again. She said that the 2 children in the manor were now being cared for too well, which might invite gossip, and hinted that Jiyu Jingxian should get rid of them to avoid them becoming a liability in the future. My gaze turned cold. It seems some people cannot be kept any longer. Jiyu Jingxian was utterly exhausted by Jiyu Mingyu's affairs. After returning to the manor, he mostly stayed in his study, occasionally seeking solace with concubine Liu. That night, just as he had settled down in concubine Liu's room, a series of mournful cries and chaotic noises erupted from outside. What's going on? Jiyu Jingxian threw on his robe and stood up, furious. A young maid stumbled in, her face deathly pale. Master, madam, it's terrible. The western estate is on fire. I heard people have been burned to death. Jiyu Jingxian and concubine Liu both turned pale at the same time. Who was burned to death? Jiyu Jingxian asked urgently. It seems, it's the room where those 2 children that the madam had been looking after were staying. The little maid trembled as she spoke. Aunt Liu's legs went weak, and she nearly collapsed to the ground, her eyes filled with terror. When I received the news and rushed to the front courtyard, Jiyu Jingxian was sitting in the main seat with a livid expression, while Aunt Liu knelt on the floor, weeping as pitifully as a pear blossom bathed in rain. Master, it truly has nothing to do with me. I was just speaking off-handedly. How could I have known that a calamity would strike from the heavens? Aunt Liu sobbed uncontrollably. Just a casual remark. I walked over and sat down beside Jiyu Jingxian, my voice calm but carrying a chill. Aunt Liu, just a few days ago you told me that the children on the estate were a potential problem, and then the estate caught fire, killing them all. This sudden, unexpected fire is just too much of a coincidence. Madame Liu suddenly looked up at me, her eyes filled with venom. Madam, how can you slander me like this? Are you trying to drive me to my death? Whether I'm slandering you or not, you know the truth in your heart. I turned to Jiyu Jingxian. My lord, The fire at the estate that killed innocent children is a matter that could be handled with discretion or blown out of proportion. If word gets out that the minister's residence mistreats its servants, leading to the tragic death of young children, I fear it could harm your official reputation. Moreover, Mother specifically inquired about those 2 children just the other day. If she were to find out about this, Jiyu Jingshuan's face grew even more grim. Lady Liu is malicious and heartless, showing no compassion for the servants and nearly causing a disaster that would disgrace our family's reputation from this day forward. She is stripped of her concubine privileges and will be moved to the northern courtyard's prayer hall to reflect on her mistakes. Without my order, she is not to take a single step outside. Concubine Liu was as if struck by lightning, crying out in despair, "My lord, have mercy on me, my lord." 2 sturdy maids stepped forward and unceremoniously dragged her away. Jiyu Jingxian wearily rubbed his temples and looked at me. "Madam, the follow-up matters at the estate, and the matter of consolation, I leave to you to handle." "Don't worry, my lord," I nodded, then paused before adding, "However, after this incident, I believe the staff at the estate needs to be thoroughly reorganized. Moreover, as Jinnah is growing older, the servants attending to him must be carefully screened to ensure no further mistakes occur. I was thinking it might be best to transfer all the employment contracts of the servants in Jinnah's courtyard to my management, so that no one with ill intentions can be bribed by unscrupulous means and harm my child. I was taking this opportunity to seize control over everyone in Mingjin's courtyard." Jiyu Jingxian was feeling restless at the moment, so he didn't think too much and waved his hand. "These household matters, you decide, madam." "Thank you, husband." I lowered my eyelids, and the fire at the estate was, of course, arranged by me. The building that burned down was empty. My 2 children had long been moved to a safer place by Wei Chengshan. Aunt Liu just happened to jump out and take the blame for me, which also gave me a legitimate reason to clean up the inner household and strengthen my control over Mingjin. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. After dealing with Aunt Liu and the turmoil at the estate, Jiyu Jingxian seemed to quiet down for a while, focusing all his efforts on rescuing Jiyu Mingyu. The Imperial examination fraud case ultimately resulted in Jiyu Mingyu being penalized with 1 year's salary deduction and ordered to stay at home to study and reflect on his mistakes, on the grounds of improper conduct, associating with the children of examiners, and arousing suspicion. When Jiyu Mingyu was brought back to the mansion, he looked utterly haggard, with none of his former high spirits remaining. I continued to play the role of the caring mother, comforting him gently. "It's good that you're back. Losing your official position doesn't matter. What's important is that you're safe. From now on, focus on studying at home. There will always be a way forward." He lowered his head, mumbled a vague response, and hurried back to his own courtyard. Jiyu Jingxian watched the dejected back of his eldest son, his face darkening. One day, he suddenly asked me, "Madam, have you heard any news about that old woman surnamed Sun from West City recently?" I sneered inwardly, but on my face, I feigned a thoughtful expression. "Nanny Sun? Oh, you mean the one by Lotus Heart's side? No, I haven't. Wasn't it said that she went missing? Why are you suddenly asking about her, my lord?" Jiyu Jingxian stared at me. "Nothing, I just find it a bit strange. Where could an old woman like her, all alone, possibly go? Perhaps she went to seek refuge with distant relatives, or perhaps something unfortunate happened to her." I sighed. In these times, an elderly person with no one to rely on is truly pitiable. Jiyu Jingxian fell silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Madam, you seem to have been in rather frequent contact with the Wei family lately." I openly admit, yes, father's old ailment has been recurring, and I'm concerned, so naturally, we've exchanged more letters. I also wrote to my elder brother to ask about the situation at the border. "What, my husband? Do you find this inappropriate?" I brought up my father and brother. And Jiyu Jingxian was immediately left speechless. He couldn't very well say I shouldn't care about my own father and brother. "No, just asking casually," he said resentfully. A few more days passed, and he quietly told me that Jiyu Jingxian had secretly sent people to check the accounts of several dowry shops under my name. Naturally, they found nothing. After being dismissed from his position, Ji Mingyu became completely dispirited and drowned his sorrows in alcohol all day long. That day, after getting drunk, Ji Mingyu had a dispute with his wife and accidentally pushed her, causing her to miscarry. When the news arrived, the Prime Minister's residence was furious. Ji Jingxian personally went to apologize but was turned away by the Prime Minister. In the end, the matter was resolved by the Prime Minister forcing Ji Mingyu to write a letter of divorce and taking his daughter back. Ji Jingxian returned to his residence in a rage and smashed a set of blue and white porcelain brush washers from the previous dynasty in his study. At the same time, news arrived from the border that the northern Di had invaded. Wei Zheng, leading the Wei family army, achieved victory in the first battle. The emperor was overjoyed and issued an edict to commend them, further elevating the Wei family's prestige. I immediately wrote a letter to my elder brother, mentioning only one thing. Minister Ji Yu seemed to have some criticism regarding the military supplies at the border, which might affect the morale of the troops. I hoped my brother would make preparations early. My elder brother Wei Zheng was a seasoned veteran of the battlefield, with a fiery temper and a deep-seated hatred for civilian officials who tried to hinder military affairs. After receiving my letter, he immediately submitted a memorial to the emperor, using strong language to state that the soldiers at the frontier were fighting with their lives on the line. If anyone in the rear withheld military supplies and shook morale, he would be the first to oppose it, requesting His Majesty's wise judgment. The emperor, in the midst of military campaigns and relying heavily on Wei Zheng, was displeased upon reading the memorial. He publicly reprimanded Ji Jingxian in court, ordering him to ensure the frontier supplies without fail. Ji Jingxuan's attempt to gain an advantage backfired, and he lost all face in the imperial court. After returning to his residence, he stormed straight into my room, his face ashen and his eyes frighteningly sinister. Wei Jingshu, what exactly do you want? He growled. No trace of his usual gentleness and elegance remaining. I was sitting by the window reading when I heard this. Slowly, I set down the book and lifted my gaze to look at him, my expression calm. Husband, why do you say that? I only wish to live peacefully, support my husband, and raise our children, be a good wife and mother. He sneered repeatedly. You secretly ruined Mingyu's future and marriage, and drove a wedge between me and Wei Zheng. Is this what you call being a good wife and mother? Watch your words, husband. My face darkened. Mingyu brought this upon himself by breaking the law. What does it have to do with me? His quarrel with his wife led to her miscarriage. Did I incite that? As for my elder brother, as the commander at the border, it is his duty to fight for the country and protect the rights of his soldiers. If my husband creates difficulties for the military supplies at court, is my brother not allowed to speak up? Every word I spoke was justified, leaving Ji Jingxian speechless. His chest heaved violently as he pointed at me. Good, what a sharp tongue. Wei Jingshu, I was truly blind, thinking you were virtuous and gentle back then, virtuous and gentle. I stood up and walked over to him. My virtue and gentleness are not meant for you and your deceased childhood sweetheart to bully and trample upon me and my own flesh and blood. I finally laid half of my cards on the table. Ji Jingxuan's pupils contracted sharply, staring at me with shock and uncertainty. You really, what do you mean, really? I stared him down. Ji Jingxian, if you don't want others to know, you shouldn't have done it. What you owe me. What you owe my children, I will collect every last bit. With interest. This is only the beginning. Are you threatening me? His gaze turned dangerous. I shook my head gently. No, I'm just stating a fact. The color instantly drained from Ji Jingxuan's face, and he staggered back a step. He stared at me fiercely for a long moment, and in the end, without saying a word, he turned abruptly and almost fled from my room, after Ji Jingxian hastily left me. The atmosphere in the mansion dropped to a freezing point. Not long after, my second daughter, Ji Mingru, who had married into the princess's residence, returned home for a visit. Ji Jingxian personally went to the second gate to welcome her, his face beaming with smiles as he tried to recreate the scene of a loving father and a filial daughter from the past. Daughter pays respects to father. Ji Mingru performed a proper bow with a respectful attitude, yet there was a lack of intimacy. Quickly rise. quickly rise." Jiyu Jingxian promptly helped her up and carefully observed her. "You've lost weight. Have you been wronged at the Junwang residence?" "Father, what are you saying?" Jiyu Mingru smiled faintly. "The prince and the princess treat me very well, but the rules in the mansion are strict. Not as free as when I was at home. When it was my turn to receive her greeting, she still wore that standardized smile and followed the same formal etiquette. Daughter pays respects to mother. How have you been lately, mother?" I looked at her, at this face so strikingly similar to Li Lianxin's. In my past life, I had poured so much maternal love into her, and now, an equal measure of cold hatred had settled in my heart. "I am well, thank you for your concern." I gave a slight, perfunctory gesture of support, my tone indifferent. "You are doing well in the Junwang residence, so I am at ease." At the banquet, the atmosphere was even more delicate. Jiyu Jingxian tried his best to create a harmonious family atmosphere, constantly searching for topics of conversation. Jiyu Mingru's responses were always appropriate, yet she skillfully avoided the main issues. "Elder brother has also fallen on hard times, but it's sister-in-law who suffers." "Oh, look at me, she's no longer sister-in-law now." She gently dabbed the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief. With every word she spoke, Jiyu Jingxuan's expression grew darker. I sat to the side, quietly eating my meal, occasionally putting food into Mingjin's bowl beside me. Halfway through the banquet, Jiyu Mingru expressed a desire to take a stroll in the garden to get some fresh air. Jiyu Jingxian naturally agreed. I watched her retreating figure as she left with her maid and gave Chundao a meaningful glance. Chundao understood and quietly followed after her. After a while, Chundao returned and whispered a few words in my ear. A cold glint flashed in my eyes. I had Wei Cheng bring matron Sun out from her hiding place and settle her securely in an absolutely safe location in the capital. At the same time, I went to see her in person. After a few days apart, Stewardess Sun seemed to have aged considerably, but her eyes were clear and resolute. "Madam," upon seeing me, she was about to kneel. I held her up. "There is no need for such formalities. Madam, today, I have invited you here to ask you to write down everything you know about Miss Li Lianxin and the truth regarding her childbirth. Please provide a written testimony with your signature." Nanny Sun raised her head, tears welling in her eyes. "This old servant understands. I have wronged Miss Lianxin. I have wronged the madam. I am willing to testify. Jiyu Jingxian is a heartless beast. He deceived the young lady. He deceived the madam. May he die a wretched death." She picked up the brush, her hand trembling slightly from agitation, but she still wrote down the long-buried events clearly, word by word, including how Li Lianxin secretly interacted with Jiyu Jingxian, how they conceived a child out of wedlock, and how, during childbirth, the child was swapped by Jiyu Jingxuan's arranged personnel. I secretly sent Granny Sun's testimony, along with her as a witness, into the palace, directly presenting it before His Majesty. At the same time, I attached a tearful and heartfelt petition. In the letter, I did not overly emphasize personal grievances. Instead, speaking from the position of a subject's wife, the Wei family, I recounted how I discovered that my husband, Jiyu Jingxian, was morally corrupt, had mixed up bloodlines, deceived the emperor, and even intended to frame loyal officials and undermine the foundation of the state. To preserve the dignity of the royal family and the court, I dared not make this public. I could only submit a secret memorial to the emperor. Humbly requesting His Majesty's wise judgment, I positioned myself as the loyal daughter of a minister, forced to expose her own husband for the greater good. As expected, on the third day after my testimony and petition were submitted, an imperial decree arrived summoning me for an audience. Upon hearing the news, Jiyu Jingxuan's face instantly turned as pale as a sheet. He grabbed my arm with such force that it felt like he might shatter my bones, his voice hoarse as he said, "Wei Jingshu, what have you done?" I calmly brushed his hand away, straightened my court attire as a titled lady, and said slowly, "Husband, I told you, the game should be over." In the hall of mental cultivation, sandalwood incense curled upward, I knelt on the cold ground, with the emperor above me, his bright yellow dragon robe dazzlingly brilliant. "Weisha, is there any falsehood in what you have stated?" The emperor's voice betrayed neither joy nor anger, carrying the unique authority of a sovereign. "Every word I have spoken is true, Your Majesty, both witnesses and evidence are present. I dare not utter a single false word. I kowtow, my voice clear and steady. I, your subject's wife, know that exposing my husband goes against moral principles, but Jiyu Jingxian has deceived the emperor, confused the bloodline, and attempted to frame a border general. His intentions are unforgivable. As a daughter of the Wei family, I cannot prioritize personal interests over the safety of the nation. I implore Your Majesty to investigate thoroughly." The hall fell into complete silence. After a long while, a faint voice came from above. "I, the Emperor, have taken note. You may withdraw now. Your humble subject's wife thanks Your Majesty for your gracious favor." I kowtowed once more, then rose to my feet and, keeping my head lowered, respectfully retreated from the hall of mental cultivation. By the time I returned to the minister's residence, dusk was already approaching. Jiyu Jingxian sat dejectedly in the main seat of the hall, his face ashen. When he saw me enter, he suddenly raised his head, his eyes blazing with a maddened hatred. "Wei Jingshu, how cruel you are! You've ruined me, you've destroyed the Jiyu family." I walked over and sat down in the chair opposite him, my demeanor composed. "Cruel." I repeated the word, finding it somewhat laughable. "Jiyu Jingxian, compared to what you did to me and my two flesh and blood, everything I'm doing now is merely seeking justice." "Justice?" He let out a hoarse laugh, looking as if he had gone mad. "Victors are kings and losers bandits. What justice is there to speak of? I only regret being too soft-hearted back then, not getting rid of you sooner." "Soft-hearted?" I looked at him coldly. "If you were soft-hearted, my children wouldn't be serving as slaves in the manor." "Jiyu Jingxian, you're not soft-hearted, you're utterly selfish, wanting both the power of my Wei family and a splendid future for you and your true love's child. How can all the good things in the world be monopolized by you?" Struck by my words, his face turned pale then flushed, and he suddenly broke into a violent, heart-wrenching cough. At that moment, the sound of urgent hoofbeats and authoritative commands came from outside the mansion. "Imperial decree has arrived." Jiyu Jingxian trembled all over, the madness in his eyes fading away, leaving only utter despair. The eunuch announcing the decree stepped into the main hall with an expressionless face, followed by a team of imperial guards. "Investigation reveals that Jiyu Jingxian, Minister of Rights, is deficient in virtue, fails to maintain proper household order, confuses bloodlines, deceives the sovereign, and furthermore associates with border generals with unclear intentions. It is hereby decreed that Jiyu Jingxian be stripped of all official positions, his noble title revoked, and his family property confiscated. Jiyu Jingxian himself shall be exiled 3,000 li to the bitter cold lands of the northern desert, never to be recalled. His son, Jiyu Mingyu, shall have his scholarly honors revoked and be demoted to commoner status, with 3 generations barred from holding office. His daughter, Jiyu Mingru, shall be immediately sent back from the princess's residence, divorced from the commandery prince, and expelled back to the Jiyu family. Additionally, Lady Wei, having rendered meritorious service in exposing the crimes, is specially granted a divorce, conferred the title of County Mistress of Mingli, awarded a residence befitting a commandery princess, and her children shall take the Wei surname. So it is decreed. Jiyu Jingxian collapsed to the ground, his face ashen. The imperial guards immediately sprang into action, swarming into the residence like wolves and tigers, sealing the storerooms and inventorying the valuables. The once illustrious minister's residence was instantly thrown into chaos, with sounds of crying, shouting, and scolding filling the air. Jiyu Mingyu was dragged out of his own courtyard, struggling and roaring. "I'm innocent. I'm the eldest young master of the Jiyu family. You can't treat me like this." Yet no one paid him any attention. And Jiyu Mingru would soon be sent back by the princess's residence. On the day Jiyu Jingxian was escorted out of the capital, I took Mingjin, along with Wei Cheng and others, and moved back to the manor bestowed upon me by His Majesty. When Jiyu Jingxian left the capital, he was wearing prison garb, shackled, and looked haggard. I did not go to see him off, only watched from afar from the high tower of the residence. Not long after, Jiyu Mingru was sent back by the princess's residence. She was dressed in plain clothes, without any makeup, and when she saw me, her eyes held a complex expression. In the end, she said nothing and silently moved into the small courtyard assigned to her. Jiyu Mingyu was also driven out of the original minister's residence. Relying on a meager amount of private savings, he rented a small house on the outskirts of the capital, barely managing to survive. After handling these trivial matters, I took Mingjin, under Wei Cheng's protection, and personally went to the hidden estate in the outskirts of the capital. When I walked into the cleanly swept courtyard and saw the two children standing there, my eyes instantly welled up with tears. The boy looks very much like my elder brother, clearly a child of our Wei family, though thin and frail. His eyes are clear and bright. The girl resembles me more, standing there and bowing to me gently. I tried my best to make my voice sound gentle. Don't be afraid, I'm here to take you home. I brought the children back to the mansion. I named the boy Mingyu and the girl Mingyu. At first, they were a bit reserved, especially Mingyu, who had suffered too much hardship in the countryside and was quite sensitive. But with the patient care from me and Mingjin, they gradually became more cheerful. And Mingyu in particular became very attached to me. The Nanyang Wei family is my solid backing. When my father and elder brother learned the truth, they were both heartbroken and furious. They applauded Jiyu Jingxuan's downfall and showed even more compassion and support for me. With the Wei family's presence, no one dared to look down on me and my 3 children because of the Jiyu family's collapse. A year later, the emperor, in recognition of the Wei family's loyalty, issued an edict to commend them, bestowed an honorary title, and allowed Mingyu to inherit a nominal rank of nobility. I no longer obsess over power and influence, instead devoting most of my energy to raising my children and managing my own businesses. I managed my dowry shops meticulously, while secretly supporting some impoverished scholars and helping destitute women with no one to rely on. Having lived a second life, I deeply understand the difficulties women face in this world. And I wish to do what I can to offer them a glimmer of hope. In this life, Wei Jingshu lived clearly and joyfully for herself and for her children. Enough. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My grandfather passed away, and I went to the capital to seek refuge with my fiancé. I heard he was arrogant and aloof, already had someone he loved in his heart, and looked down on me, his fiancé from the countryside. I was anxious all the way, but when I met him, I realized the rumors were false. He was clearly pure and self-disciplined, gentle in nature, not to mention handsome, and he cherished me deeply. I married him with peace of mind. After 3 months of marriage, my nephew, who had returned to the capital from his studies abroad, came to pay his respects, staring at me in a daze. Later, I happened to see him confront my husband at our doorstep. His face full of disbelief. Second uncle, how could you impersonate me and marry my fiancé? Before my grandfather passed away, he held my hand and told me that I was part of an arranged marriage from childhood. It's the second son of the Jiangju Pei family. His name is... Before he could finish speaking the name, the old master took one last heavy breath and passed away. I was overwhelmed with grief. After handling my grandfather's funeral affairs, half a month later, I took the token and went to the capital. My grandfather once served in the Imperial Hospital. When he grew older, he resigned from his official post and returned to his hometown, where he opened a medical clinic to make a living, because he once treated my young fiancé. This marriage arrangement was settled. My grandfather didn't clearly state the other party's name, but I remember it's the second son of the Pei family from Jiangju. It shouldn't be too difficult to find. Besides, before my grandfather passed away from illness, he mustered his strength and wrote a letter to the Jiangju Pei family. Before I set off, I also wrote a letter and sent it, stating my estimated time of arrival in the capital, and asking Pei to be sure to send someone to pick me up at the dock. Be sure to. In the letter, I hesitated for a moment, then circled those 2 words, otherwise, I won't recognize anyone. What if I get lost? After boarding the ship, I gazed out at the river. Enjoying the sea breeze, I was in a relaxed mood when suddenly I overheard two people talking behind me. "Hey, have you heard? Peya's country fiancé is coming to the capital to find him." Peya. I looked down at myself. A country fiancé? It can't be such a coincidence, another person asked in confusion. But Peya is still a scion of a noble family. How could he be engaged to a country girl? It seems the two families had some connection, which is why the engagement was arranged. After all these years, who knows what she's like now? That country girl is bound to return disappointed. Not only does Peya already have Jiang Qinghan by his side, but having grown up in the countryside, she's surely ugly, rough, and uncouth. Someone as proud and arrogant as Peya would never even glance at her. I couldn't bear to listen any longer. I turned and shot them a fierce glare before walking away. Miss. Footsteps hurried behind me as the two men caught up. "May I ask if we have offended you in any way just now? I am He Lang, and I offer my sincerest apologies. May I ask for your name, miss?" "Yes, I am Chen Fangju." Their expressions were so fervent it was almost alarming. I quickly closed the door, shutting them out. Grandfather was right. People outside are truly frightening. This official ship set off from Jiangnan and was heading all the way to the capital. Those two were dressed in luxurious clothes and spoke with a Yunjing accent. They were undoubtedly from Yunjing. Then the Peya they mentioned must be the same Peya I am engaged to. He looks down on me because I grew up in the countryside, and he already has someone he loves. I clenched my fingers tightly. Once I get to the capital and verify it's true, I won't marry him then, I thought with fierce determination. After several days of tossing and turning on the boat, we finally docked. Carrying my bundle on my back, I disembarked and immediately spotted a flag bearing the Pei family emblem. Thankfully, the Pei family had sent someone to fetch me. I walked toward him. "Let's go." The person holding the banner seemed not to have reacted, staring at me blankly. I was puzzled. "Aren't you from the Pei family, the Pei clan of Jiangju?" Only then did the person seem to understand, asking me somewhat tentatively, "Are you Miss Wen?" I nodded, led by him to a carriage. The other person kindly reminded me, "Miss Wen, today it is Second Master himself who has come to pick you up. He has something he wishes to say to you." Second Master Pei came in person. I froze for a moment, feeling a bit uneasy. I wasn't yet prepared to meet my fiancé directly. Besides, he's dissatisfied with me. Just as I was lost in thought, the carriage curtain was lifted by a slender hand. I looked up and met a pair of cold, distant eyes. The person inside the carriage wore a perfectly tailored moon-white brocade robe. His figure was slender and upright, radiant and pure like an orchid or a jade tree, exuding an indescribable nobility and elegance. I was momentarily dazed, almost captivated by this person's striking appearance. But then I recalled the rumors I had heard along the way and quickly sobered up. No matter how handsome he looks or how noble he appears, what good is it if he looks down on me, sitting in the carriage? I said, "Second young Master Pei, if you have something to say, just say it directly, no rush." His phoenix eyes fixed on me, his thin lips parting slightly as he spoke in a cool, slightly deep voice. "I heard the young lady has had a long and tiring journey. You should return to the residence first and rest properly." I did not refuse. The Jiangju Pei family, being an aristocratic clan, naturally possessed substantial wealth. I've traveled a long way here. Since I'm about to be rejected in marriage, can't I at least enjoy some good food? But Peya truly meant it when he said there was no hurry. I rested in his residence for 3 whole days without catching a single glimpse of him. I could only talk to the maids assigned to take care of me, trying to gather information about Peya from them. The maid said that Peya's name was Pei Du, and he had been appointed by the emperor as the deputy minister of the Court of Judicial Review at a young age. Such an outstanding man would be somewhat wasted on someone like me. Then, "Do you know Jiang Qinghan?" Upon hearing this name, the maid's expression suddenly changed, and the way she looked at me seemed to carry a hint of sympathy. I knew she recognized her. "Then, what is her relationship with Pei Du, Second Master?" The maid thought for a moment. "Miss Jiang has no relationship with the Second Master, but the Second Young Master treats her a bit differently." The maid added, "The Second Young Master is our Second Master's nephew." Suddenly, it all made sense to me. Then I misunderstood. on the boat. Those two were talking about Peidu's nephew, not Peidu. I just didn't expect that Peidu's nephew also had a fiancé similar to me. We should be able to get along well in the future. After finding out that Peidu had no one in his residence and maintained a clean reputation, I was even more satisfied. It seems the fiancé my grandfather picked for me is quite good. He personally brought me back to the mansion, which didn't seem like he was indifferent. After thinking for a few days, I felt I couldn't just sit back and wait for death. Since the misunderstanding had been cleared up, as an engaged couple, we should properly nurture our feelings. On the day off, having found out that Peidu was at the mansion, I borrowed the small kitchen to make some pastries and pear soup to send over. Second Master, what do you think Miss Wen means by this? Watching the food box sent by the second young master's fiancé to the second master, the servants were utterly perplexed. Peidu opened the food box to find a stack of peach slice cakes with an enticing color, accompanied by a steaming bowl of snow pear and silver ear soup. Its sweet aroma wafting through the air, the attendant blurted out, "She even knows the master has a sweet tooth." This must have been the result of careful investigation. The servants in the mansion are not the type to be loose-lipped. This Miss Wen truly has a remarkable talent for winning people over. Could it be that Miss Wen, seeing her marriage prospects with the second young master fall through, is now trying to latch onto you? Peidu's gaze faltered for a moment as he lifted his head and cast a light glance at his attendant. "When did you learn to harbor ill intentions toward others?" The attendant quickly corrected himself. "Then it must be that she is grateful for your kindness in taking her in, second master, and sent these things as a token of her appreciation." Appreciation. That explanation sounded even more uncomfortable than the previous one. He picked up the pastry and took a small bite, sweet but not cloying. The sip of the snow pear and silver ear soup was even more pleasantly sweet. Did she make all of this herself? Yes, the kitchen staff is keeping an eye on it. After finishing his meal unhurriedly, Peidu contemplated and said, "Pick out some fabric from the storeroom and have a few new clothes made for her." The attendant cautiously asked, "Master, for how many seasons should we prepare, if the second young master is determined not to return?" The marriage arrangement between the second young master and Miss Wen had been known to the Pei family for a long time. When the second young master was a child, he contracted a strange illness. The eldest master took him to seek treatment from the retired physician Wen, and they stayed in that rural area for some time. The eldest master had a fondness for mystical arts. On a whim, he decided to match the birth charts of his second son and Miss Wen. The results showed they were a match made in heaven. Without consulting anyone, he arranged the marriage for the second young master. Recently, old man Wen sent a letter saying he was nearing the end of his life and that his granddaughter would soon be coming to the capital to seek refuge. The main branch of the Pei family was about to become quite lively. The eldest master insisted on keeping his promise, but the madam and the second young master were both adamantly opposed. Leaving the two sides at a stalemate, things got even livelier when a letter from Miss Wen arrived. The letter demanded that someone must come to fetch her, and for emphasis, she even drew a large circle around the words. This immediately convinced the madam and the second young master that Miss Wen was a crude and overbearing girl, making them even more unwilling. The second young master took the opportunity to travel to Jiangnan under the guise of study. And he went together with the young lady from the Jiang family, who was also returning to her ancestral home for a visit. It seemed likely that upon their return, the two would tie the knot. If the second young master wants to leave, then let him go. But he was so afraid that when Miss Wen arrived in the capital, the eldest master would force them to marry, perhaps even having a rooster stand in for him during the wedding ceremony, that he came to the second master, begging him to help send her away. The second master and the second young master had always been close since childhood, with only a 5-year age difference. The second young master couldn't quite distinguish between them when they were little, so he clung to the second master, calling him big brother all the time. Seeing him so anxious and fearful, the second master naturally couldn't refuse to help. But what was the second master really thinking? Following the usual approach, act decisively. Give compensation, and send the person away. Why let them stay? Now we even have to make clothes for them. Surely he hasn't been bewitched by her beauty. To be fair, Miss Wen's appearance is outstanding, rare in this world, indeed unlike a daughter raised in the countryside. If the second young master had left just one day later and seen what his fiancée looked like, he probably wouldn't have resisted, have clothes made for all seasons, and send someone to buy her some jewelry. Peidu pondered for a moment. The weather is getting colder too. Arrange for charcoal in her room, with the same allowance as mine. The attendant left with a head full of questions. After delivering the food once, my fiancé arranged for beautiful clothes and jewelry. I took it as a form of affirmation for me. It seems he does care about me, but he's just reserved by nature and doesn't know how to express it. Then I'll have to take the initiative. After that, I started sending Peidu various snacks every day, always trying something new. Sometimes I thought about making medicinal meals, but then I wondered if I should check Peidu's pulse first. After that busy period, Peidu came back to the residence every day. I picked a time to go over and said I had something to discuss with him. The people around Peidu looked as if they had seen a ghost, but they still went in to report. What's all the fuss about? Every time I bring food, the people around Peidu have this exact expression. What's so strange about me visiting my own fiancé? After I entered, that person deliberately left the door wide open, sneaking glances like a thief. The cool breeze blew in, making it quite chilly. It wasn't until Peidu went over and closed the door that things got a little better. He poured me a cup of tea and asked, "How has Miss Wen been staying at the residence lately?" "Quite well," I honestly replied. "It's just that you're too busy. I can never seem to see you." Upon hearing this, Peidu choked on the tea he had just sipped and started coughing violently. I quickly stood up and gently patted his back to help him catch his breath. "Are you all right?" "It's nothing." Peidu waved his hand, signaling for me to sit back down. My gaze instantly fell upon his slender hands. My fiancé is truly blessed with extraordinary looks. Even his hands are so long and elegant, with distinct, well-defined knuckles. By the time I realized it, my hand had already reached for his pulse. Peidu looked up at me, somewhat puzzled. I cleared my throat and said, "The weather has been getting colder lately. I came over to check your pulse and see if you need any medicinal cuisine for nourishment. After all, he is my future husband, so I naturally care about his health." Peidu pressed his lips together, his long, lowered eyelashes trembling intensely. "This isn't appropriate, is it? I understand, after all, we are not yet married." My fiancé is shy and reserved. Even after bringing me back for so long, he hasn't taken the initiative to visit me. Though he said this, he didn't withdraw his hand, allowing his wrist to remain quietly under my touch. I tried to reassure him, "It's fine. There's no one else here." Upon hearing this, Peidu looked up in shock, his narrow eyes widening into a rounder shape. The skin beneath my fingers was as smooth and warm as jade. And I quickly made my judgment. The pulse was strong and vigorous, with no major issues. Though there was a bit of excess internal heat, it would be enough to prepare some cooling remedies. Withdrawing my hand, Peidu called out to me, "Miss Wen," I said seriously, "when no one is around, you can call me Shui." Peidu lowered his head and coughed lightly, his handsome face slightly flushed. "Shui," he called out somewhat vaguely, then hesitated and asked, "Are you really sure? Does this even require thinking?" I nodded with some confusion. "Sigh, if you're this easily shy, what will we do after we get married? However, when it comes to marriage, then when shall we get married? Have you thought about it?" I asked him. Peidu pondered for a moment. "Isn't it a bit too soon? There are still many matters left unresolved." "Fast. Didn't I come to the capital to marry him? He should have been prepared long ago." I've also heard rumors on the streets that many marriages are deliberately dragged out until they fall apart. After staring blankly for a long moment, I asked him, "Don't you want to marry me?" After all, my engagement with him was arranged by our elders, and we haven't had any interaction all these years. Besides, as a lone orphan from the countryside, I truly don't deserve him. Before he could speak, I took out the token of betrothal. "If you're unwilling, we can call off the engagement right now." This object returned to its rightful owner. Peidu's gaze fixed on the token in my hand, his dark eyes rippling with subtle waves. "Breaking off the engagement? Of course not." Peidu's gaze deepened, his expression softening slightly, because there are many matters to attend to, and preparations are still needed. He gently brushed my hair behind my ear. Our wedding must be perfect in every way. Peidu said he would wait, but the process moved along quickly. When meeting his parents, brother, and sister-in-law, I obediently greeted each of them one by one, yet I still received strange looks. Peidu's parents didn't say anything, and his sister-in-law was all smiles, but his older brother kept looking at me and sighing as he did. In private, I asked him, "Does your brother have some dissatisfaction with me?" Peidu and his elder brother had quite a significant age gap. I once overheard the servants mention that the eldest young master was originally the only son of the Pei family, but he became deeply obsessed with mystical practices, fearing that he might abandon worldly affairs for the path of cultivation. The master and mistress decided to have another child, Peidu. As a result, Peidu is only 5 years older than his elder brother's own son. However, I'm not quite sure about the relationship between those two, Peidu said nonchalantly. Don't mind him. He previously introduced me to a young lady from a prominent family, but I didn't follow his advice. That's why he's acting this way. Hearing the reason, I complained, "We've been engaged for a long time. How could he do this?" "Yes," Peidu gently stroked my cheek and said with a light laugh, "So before the wedding, stay away from him." "All right." I nodded obediently and focused on preparing for the wedding with peace of mind. Soon came the day of the grand wedding. After the tedious day had passed, on the wedding night, Peidu lifted the bridal veil from my head. With just one glance at him, my face flushed red. He was already handsome and fair-skinned with a tall, elegant figure, but the crimson robe he wore made his features look as exquisite as a painting. "From now on, this will be my husband." Grandfather's judgment was indeed sharp. Back when he came for treatment, he was still so young. Yet grandfather could tell he was someone reliable to entrust with my future. On his deathbed, grandfather mentioned that I had met him when we were children and got along quite well, which is why he arranged this marriage for me. Later, I suffered a high fever, and many things from that time have become unclear to me. After drinking the nuptial wine and taking off the heavy wedding dress, I asked him, "Peidu, do you still remember what happened between us when we were children?" Upon hearing this, Peidu paused slightly, raising a barely noticeable smile. "It was too long ago, I can't remember clearly." With a sudden lightness, I was lifted onto his lap. He stared at me, his pupils deep and unfathomable. "Why are you suddenly asking about things from our childhood?" After I explained that I couldn't remember due to having a fever, he gently patted my head. "If you don't remember, then you don't remember. Let's just focus on the future." I nodded. Watching my husband's handsome face draw near, I gently closed my eyes. Soft, slightly cool lips lightly touched mine. My body trembled, a tingling sensation spreading from my lips to the depths of my heart, then extending through my limbs. Sensing my reaction, Peidu gently patted my back with his large hand. "Don't be afraid." The warmth spraying on my face grew more urgent as Peidu softly called my name, "Shui." "Open your mouth." I obediently parted my lips. The next second, a heated, wine-laced tongue pressed in, sending shivers of tingling sensation through me. Then came the overwhelming storm of passion. As the clouds dispersed and the rain ceased, I closed my eyes, ready to sleep, when suddenly he pulled me back into his embrace. His voice was somewhat mesmerizing. "One more time, may I?" I nodded instinctively. But isn't it said that he isn't driven by desire? No time to ponder further. I was dragged by him into a new storm. Peidu truly is an excellent husband. After we married, he moved into a separate residence and didn't impose many restrictions on me. Every day after work, he would bring back some delicious food and fun trinkets from the street. There weren't many people in the residence, and managing the household went extremely smoothly. The only slight annoyance was that his demands in that particular area were a bit excessive. The weather turned cold. With snowflakes drifting outside, Peidu, in his leisure time, seldom went out and instead stayed cozied up with me. The room was warmed by a charcoal fire. After finishing his meal and drinking hot soup, he became comfortably warm and began to indulge in lustful thoughts. Casting aside his usual dignified and upright demeanor, he pestered me for mischief even in broad daylight. I never would have guessed back then that he was this unrestrained. But then I remembered the servants saying he had remained chaste for 25 years, and it made a little more sense. But 25 years, is Peidu actually 8 years older than me? I fell into deep thought. Suddenly, I thought, I still need to take better care of his health. After a few sticky months, the Laba festival soon arrived. The Pei family was preparing for a family banquet, and preparations had to start a few days in advance. The place where Peidu and I lived was just a street away from the Pei residence, so I went over to help. This family banquet was organized by my elder sister-in-law, and I was watching and learning by her side. My elder sister-in-law comes from the prestigious Qinglang Shui family, a perfect match for the Pei family in terms of social status. Her every word and action follows proper etiquette, and she manages household affairs in an orderly manner, in a family like the Peis. With all its complexities, if Peidu were the eldest son, his marriage likely wouldn't have been so easily promised to me. Just as preparations were underway, a servant suddenly came to report at the door, saying the second young master had returned. My sister-in-law, who had just been arranging various matters, brightened with joy and hurried toward the door. Before leaving, she cast a hurried glance in my direction. I quickly followed after her. Of my sister-in-law's 2 children, the eldest daughter was already married, leaving only the second young master, whom she cherished as dearly as the apple of her eye. At the time of my grand wedding with Peidu, he was in Jiangnan and couldn't make it back, only sending gifts. Just as I reached the courtyard entrance, I bumped right into a young man dressed in black martial attire with a high ponytail. The Pei family members are all quite good-looking, and this second young master Pei Jiao is no exception. His features carry a touch of, and with his lively expressions, he exudes a rather unrestrained and dashing charm. His elder sister-in-law scolded him upon seeing him. "Jiao, you're back in the capital, why didn't you send word? I could have had someone meet you at the dock, what's there to pick up?" Pei Jiao didn't think much of it. He lifted his head and lightly scanned the Pei family members, then suddenly paused his gaze. After a few breaths, he quickly snapped back to attention. "Who is this?" His gaze was fixed on me as he asked. I opened my mouth, about to speak. My sister-in-law beat me to it and answered him. "This is your second uncle's newlywed wife. You should call her aunt." Pei Jiao averted his gaze and didn't call out to anyone, instead directly changing the subject. "Speaking of which, where's my second uncle?" "Your second uncle is naturally busy with official duties." The mother and son from the main branch continued talking as they walked forward together. I followed behind, feeling somewhat confused. Why does it seem like everyone in the main household has a problem with me? After returning, I was in a foul mood and poured out my frustrations in front of Peidu. But I noticed Peidu's expression seemed a bit off as he listened. He lowered his gaze slightly, his usually gentle eyes now carrying an indescribable coldness. "Pei Jiao," Peidu comfortingly patted my head. "You needn't mind him, he's still young and inevitably lacks some manners." I suddenly realized I had spoken ill of his nephew in front of Peidu and felt a bit embarrassed, so I tried to make amends. "Actually, it's not that serious. I noticed he does understand etiquette. He came to pay respects to his elders as soon as he returned. Maybe he's just a bit shy around me since we're not familiar with each other." "Is that so?" Peidu gently played with my long hair, his tone neither warm nor cold. That night in bed, just as things were heating up, he suddenly pulled away. I opened my eyes somewhat dazedly. "Shui, say you have feelings for me, and I will." "You?" I widened my eyes, staring at him in disbelief as he uttered such words with a face of pure innocence. Peidu was becoming more and more shameless in the bedroom these days. However, I licked my lips, feeling even hotter. "Why does this feel strangely seductive, husband?" I whispered softly, leaning close to his ear, and gently spoke those 3 words. Upon hearing this, the depth in his eyes intensified. "Do you truly love me? What if we hadn't been betrothed since childhood? What kind of talk is that?" I said with a hint of displeasure. "I should be the one asking that. If we hadn't been betrothed since childhood, someone like you, I wouldn't even stand a chance in line. No one can force me to do anything." Peidu gently kissed the corner of my lips. "If I hadn't decided on you at first sight, even an engagement would be useless. I understood the hidden meaning in his words and clung to him. Whining, I know you have feelings for me, but let's get to business first. Don't keep me in suspense. Pei-du chuckled softly. Alright, everything swayed before my eyes. Tonight, Pei-du was exceptionally vigorous. At the festival banquet, the newlywed couple across from us were all lovey-dovey. Unable to pinpoint the exact feeling, I took the chance to approach and offer a toast, teasing Pei-du along the way. When I left a few months ago, second uncle was still a lonely bachelor. How did he get married in such a hurry? When he returned and saw the unfamiliar yet beautiful face, he thought it was some cousin from his mother's family who had come to visit. Pei-du replied indifferently, we were deeply in love, so naturally, we were in a hurry. You and Miss Jiang went south of the Yangtze River together. How are things now? Pei Zhao vaguely brushed it off. Jiang Qinghan was his childhood sweetheart, a perfect match in both social status and beauty, so of course he liked her. A while ago, his mother sent a letter saying that the matter with the country girl had been resolved, so he began thinking about getting engaged upon his return. However, Pei Zhao's gaze drifted almost imperceptibly toward Pei-du's new bride. He had initially thought Jiang Qinghan was already exceptionally beautiful, but he never expected this young woman, whom he should address as second aunt, to surpass her in every way. Her eyes, nose, and lips, every feature struck a chord deep within his heart. When he first saw her upon his return, he thought she was some cousin from his mother's side of the family. Little did he expect that his second uncle would beat him to it. After returning, Pei Zhao summoned someone to make inquiries. What is the background of this newly wedded second aunt? Does her family have any sisters? The servant recalled, second young master. This second madam's surname is Wen. Her background isn't very prominent. I heard she's even an orphan, no sisters in her family, not even a single relative. Pei Zhao couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. He had been thinking, if this second aunt had any sisters as beautiful as she was. Wait, Pei Zhao suddenly sensed something amiss. Slightly furrowing his brows, what did you say her surname was? The masters all call her Wensha, the Wen with the character 4 door and ear. Yes. After a few moments of silence, Pei Zhao abruptly asked, what was done about the fiancé my father arranged for me? You've forgotten, the servant reminded him, before you left. You had second master help you dismiss someone. How second master dealt with that country girl? This servant doesn't know. Pei Zhao fell silent. But a faint suspicion began to form in his heart. Before the new year, Pei Zhao paid a formal visit bearing numerous gifts. Second uncle and second aunt are newly married. As your nephew, I failed to offer my congratulations in time. Today I've specially come to pay my respects. Pei-du happened to be away, so I invited the person in and ordered tea and pastries to be prepared. Sensing an intense gaze, I looked up. Pei Zhao was staring straight at me. I asked in confusion, is there something dirty on my face? Pei Zhao withdrew his gaze, his tone laced with sarcasm. When I was in Jiangnan and heard the news that second uncle was getting married, I wondered what kind of woman he had married. Now that I've met you, I realize second uncle has a sharp eye. I frowned. Why does that sound so strange? I heard second aunt is also from the Jianghuai region. I nodded. What a coincidence. I know someone who shares your hometown and also has the surname Wen. Oh. I responded, that really is a coincidence. What exactly is Pei Zhao trying to say? Why is he acting so strangely? Aunt, don't you have anything to say to me? Pei Zhao stared straight at me with a look that suggested I had wronged him. I was at a loss, so I could only say, there are quite a few people with the surname Wen in our area. If you're looking for someone, I can help you ask around. Pei Zhao sneered coldly and said nothing more. Then he set down his teacup and left. I didn't take it to heart. Unexpectedly, a servant hurriedly came to report that Pei Zhao and Pei-du had gotten into an argument. Second master returned from duty today and was stopped by second young master at the mansion gate. He seemed angry and wanted to say something to second master. Second master took him into the study to talk, and it looked like they were about to argue again. Second young master even seemed ready to throw a punch. I hurried over. As I pushed open the study door, I heard Pei Zhao's furious words, second uncle, how could you impersonate me and marry my fiancé? My mind exploded with a sudden realization. the strange attitudes of the eldest master of the Pei family and Pei Jiao, and Pei Du's loss of control that night, all suddenly had an explanation. So I was Pei Jiao's fiancé, not Pei Du's. The rumors I heard on the boat that day were also correct. My fiancé was indeed that second son of the Pei family. Pei Du actually lied to me, seeing me. Pei Jiao's sharp face couldn't hide his sarcasm. You still don't know, do you? I'm the one you're actually engaged to. You've been deceived. I was utterly bewildered. Why did Pei Du lie to me? Pei Du glanced at me cautiously, then quickly lowered his head, full of doubts. I changed my expression when I saw the faint bruise on his face. Did you hit him? It's fine. His hand was gently held, and Pei Du said softly, I accidentally bumped into the bookshelf while dodging. It's nothing. I held back, but couldn't resist any longer. I turned to Pei Jiao and said, he is your elder. How could you lay a hand on him? Pei Jiao widened his eyes, looking somewhat incredulous. What does it matter that he is an elder? He was the one who did wrong first. Then you still shouldn't have hit him, I said coldly. Besides, what exactly is wrong with what he did? From your perspective, you were the one unwilling to marry. If he hadn't stepped in, the Pei family would have been branded as faithless and dishonorable. Pei Du was cleaning up your mess, covering for you and the main branch. What face do you have? What right do you have to question him? Pei Jiao breathed heavily, angrily saying, he deceived you, and you're still speaking up for him. Whether he deceived me or not is my business. I haven't even pursued the matter yet. So why are you in such a hurry? I felt somewhat sarcastic. What's wrong? Seeing that I'm not as ugly and burly as you imagined, are you regretting it now? Pei Jiao opened his mouth. Not to mention he took over the marriage contract and married me. Even if I had come to the capital and found that my intended spouse was someone like you, I would never have gone through with the marriage. Upon hearing this, Pei Jiao's face turned pale. He gritted his teeth and said, do you think I care about you? That would be perfect. I gave him a clear signal to leave. It's getting late, second young master. You should head back now. Pei Jiao clenched his fists tighter, suppressing his anger. He clenched his jaw and strode away. I released the hand of the person behind me, who had secretly reached for it moments earlier. I glanced at Pei Du but said nothing, turning to go back to my room. Shuari. Behind me, Pei Du caught up. I quickened my pace, entered the room first, and closed the door. Shuiyi, outside the door, Pei Du's voice was somewhat low. Give me a chance to explain, will you? I didn't speak, Pei Du said. Back then, Pei Jiao was unwilling to fulfill the marriage arrangement. To avoid you, he left the capital, and before leaving, he asked me to resolve the engagement between you and him. So that's how it is. No wonder it was Pei Du who came to pick me up at the dock that day. But from the first time I saw you, I was certain about you. Letting you stay in my residence was also driven by my own selfish motives. During that time, you were extremely proactive towards me. So I thought that since your marriage arrangement with Pei Jiao fell through, you wanted to be with me, which aligned with my own thoughts. Leaning against the door, I retorted, I'm new here. And you didn't say anything. How was I supposed to know about Pei Jiao's situation? Pei Du sighed lightly. I was too presumptuous. I heard you had asked the maid about Jiang Qinghan, so I assumed you already knew. It was all just a coincidence. However, you even had someone spying on me. Pei Du remained silent for a moment. It's my fault. Later, I found out that you had mistaken me for someone else, your fiancé, so I just went along with it and admitted it. This is what I find most difficult to understand. Why did you admit to it? I muttered gloomily. If you hadn't admitted to it, the engagement could have just been called off. Couldn't you have arranged another marriage contract with me instead? That method would work, but it would take too long and the risks are too high. Pei Du explained softly. If I helped Pei Jiao break off the engagement with you, you might lump me together with him, hold a grudge against me, and refuse to fall in love with me. I remained silent. Pei Du laid out his initial calculations to me one by one. If the engagement were broken off, you would surely find another place to live in the capital, and likely seek employment at a medical clinic. Who knows how many admirers would swarm around you then? I wasn't confident you would choose me. You're right, that's exactly what I had in mind. Moreover, my parents would never agree to me breaking off the engagement with the grandson only to marry the son. But if it's about keeping our word to fulfill the agreement for the main branch by switching the engagement to someone else, and they see me delaying marriage, they'll be much more likely to relent. Besides, as you've seen, Peidu now regrets it, considering that if he had returned earlier, it would have led to more complications. I decided to take preemptive action. He certainly thought things through thoroughly. I'm a bit annoyed and asked, "Then why didn't you just tell me directly?" Still for the same reason, I wasn't confident. Peidu paused. "You and Pei Jiao have a past from childhood, and you came to the capital to marry him. If I had told you in advance about the switch, you might not have agreed. After the wedding, I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid you'd get angry, so I kept putting it off." I angrily opened the door. "You are the deputy chief of the Dali temple, yet you don't even realize this is a fraudulent marriage." I was wrong. His hand felt cool as he held mine, his beautiful eyes slightly lowered. I resorted to unscrupulous means. "You can curse me all you want, but there's one thing, I beg you, don't leave me." Since our marriage, I've seen him dignified and elegant, sharp and aloof, but I've never seen him act so pitiful before. I've finally figured it out. Peidu may appear as pure and bright as the breeze and the moon, but is actually like a glutinous rice ball, sweet on the outside but crafty on the inside. In that case, I pondered for a moment, then withdrew my hand. "Then let's sleep in separate rooms for a few days, so I can cool off. Finally, I can rest for a few days." I breathed a sigh of relief. My hand, which I had just withdrawn, was grabbed as Peidu lifted his eyes. "We haven't even been married for half a year. The servants will laugh at me." He held me as we entered the room, whispering softly, "I'll make a bed on the floor and sleep at your feet." "All right, in the cold of the 12th month, and you want him to sleep on the floor?" That scoundrel Peidu had clearly figured out that I couldn't bear to let him suffer. Back in the room, I had someone bring the ointment. Peidu had a bruise near the corner of his eye. I had already figured it out. When Pei Jiao came to the door, Peidu, being the elder, had plenty of ways to deal with him. Injuring himself was nothing more than an attempt to win my sympathy. As I applied the ointment, I sighed. Who would have thought I was so fooled by his appearance back then? Failing to see he was as slippery as a glutinous rice ball, I suddenly spoke up. "Actually, you don't need to feel so uncertain. Come to think of it, back when I thought Pei Jiao wasn't my fiancé, I heard he also had a fiancé from the countryside. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? I just prefer to believe that he is the one I am betrothed to. I should be the same as you." The first time I saw him, I was utterly captivated. Peidu naturally understood my meaning, his eyes slightly brightening. He lowered his head and gently placed a kiss by my lips. "That is truly wonderful." Extra chapter. Pei Jiao and Jiang Qinghan got married. It was he who had once begged for her hand, yet now that it had come to this, he felt an inexplicable sense of loss. At the wedding banquet, when Shui sat in the elders' section, dressed in a pink gown that made her appear more delicate and beautiful than the flowers, Pei Jiao looked at her, and a wave of regret suddenly washed over him. Earlier, he had dreamed of some events from his childhood. His father took him to Jianghuai to seek treatment from the retired physician when, there, he discovered a fairy-like girl and had a wonderful time playing with her. His father asked him if he would be willing to marry her when he grew up. He asked what marry meant. "I want to be like father and mother, to become a family." The young Pei Jiao nodded without hesitation. "Then I want to become a family with the little fairy." It was only later, after his illness was cured and he returned to the capital. The capital was bustling with too many interesting things, and he soon put that person out of his mind. As he grew up, he was mocked by many because he had a fiancée from the countryside. Pei Jiao also unconsciously developed a dislike for Wen Shui, whom he hadn't seen in years. After all these years apart, she had grown up in the countryside. Even if she was somewhat pretty as a child, she must have turned into an ordinary country girl by now. In contrast, Jiang Qinghan, with her noble upbringing and stunning beauty, was truly worthy of him. Now, Pei Jiao truly felt regret, but it was too late for regrets. After marriage, he and Jiang Qinghan had many disagreements. Jiang Qinghan complained that he treated her differently than before marriage, becoming hysterical and completely losing the gentle demeanor he once loved. He found it annoying and gradually stopped visiting her room. He took in many concubines. Their eyes, noses, and mouths all bore some resemblance to Wen Shui. He would always think of Wen Shui. Their father had their horoscopes matched and said they were a match made in heaven. After 5 years of marriage, Jiang Qinghan, unable to bear his cold treatment, gave him a slow-acting poison. When it was discovered, the poison had already penetrated deep into his organs, triggering the strange illness he had suffered from in the past. But this time, there was no physician as skilled as old Wen to cure him. He divorced Jiang Qinghan, but was left with a permanent disability, making him ineligible for official service for the rest of his life. Over the years, Pei Du and Wen Shui's relationship grew even stronger, and they were blessed with a lovely, snow-white daughter. Late at night, he would wake from dreams and think countless times, if back then, he hadn't fled to Jiangnan, hadn't chased after Jiang Qinghan, but had instead married Wen Shui. Would things be different now? After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.